So we're here for my deck tech, which is not actually my deck. It's actually two people from the state of Portland.
The state of Portland, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes, I said that earlier today, and BBD's been making fun of me this entire time. Yes, Oregon. Yeah. I don't even think their state was in Portland, to be honest. I don't actually know where it was
Probably
at. But
wasn't,
anyway, two players ended up taking this bant aggro deck to a top 8 finish at this year's standard Star City Games Spring States Championships. I think that's what it's called.
Yeah. Portland, one of the 52 states of the Union.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a great place. I've been there. I love it. But yes, so there's this bant aggro deck that Gunnar Brinkman, I have to say that's one of the best names I've ever heard in my life, and James Nelson, my cousin, ended up taking to a top 8 finish. And let's take a look at it because I think it's probably a contender for standard. I'm not going to lie. I really like this deck.
This deck does look sweet.
Yeah, so pretty much it's just a green-white beatdown deck, which, the likes of Andrew Shrout and everyone else would just, already get behind it. But it's splashing for some very interesting cards, and that would be rapid hybridization. So let's just take a look at the core of the Selesnya side of the deck, which is just Experiment Ones, Voices, Call the Conclaves, Selesnya Charms, add into the Worms as this, early tokenish generation start where you have Rootborn Defenses to not only be sometimes aggressive, sometimes defensive. This card is really good when a lot of your guys are tokens because you're able to just attack and then play it to keep aggressive, sometimes blowing them out by, making a second copy of Call for the 3/3 Centaur to, make your Experiment bigger, or even make another Voice token or an Evan Irwin token, making both of them bigger, as well as just good against cards like Supreme Verdict, Mizium Mortars, anything. When you say go with mana open against an opponent, they have to play around not only Advent of the Worm and Rootborn, and whenever you have both, you're going to blow out one of their resources. It's going to happen. It's impossible not to.
Yeah.
And the rest of the deck is just some good creatures, like a couple Boon Satyrs, a couple Breemaz. Breemaz is just a solid creature. You don't want to play too many because if you flood on them in a deck like this, you can't play defensive that well. So once you have too many copies, you just don't have as many options, and a deck like this needs a ton of options. So I like the number 2 here, and I like the number 2 Boon Satyr as well because sometimes they're just not that great as an early spell, and you just want them in the late game to bestow. Ajani's are get ya card, where you can just play an Advent into double strike it for 10, and a couple Gods Willing to protect when you're playing with these Ajani's or against any removal spell. But the heart and soul of this deck is rapid hybridization. And hybridization...
I think it's just called Pongify.
Pognify. Thank you. That's all I call it anyway. I've never actually called it this. Anyway, Pognify is this wonderful card that...
It's actually Pongify.
Pongify?
Yeah, Pongify. This isn't Pogs. We're not in middle school, Brad.
Anyway, I would say cut, but this is... I'll just live in my own shame.
Yeah, let's just keep going.
And what this card does is it allows you to do a lot of tricky things inside and out of combat against removal spells. Whenever somebody detention spheres a Voice, you can hit it with rapid hybridization, giving you not only a 3/3 Frog Lizard, but as well as the Evan Irwin token.
Yeah, minimum a 2/2. Probably bigger. Probably
bigger, yeah. You can even hit cards like Experiment 1 after you regenerate.
I don't think that works.
Does it not? Does this not regenerate? It can't be regenerated. I'm glad I didn't make that play today. Well, we can Rootborn Defenses first.
There it is.
Yeah,
there it is.
So
that's a strong.
This is also a great combo where you Rootborn your team, populate, and then make another 3/3 afterwards. But it just gives you a lot of tricks. Also, with a deck this meaty because of Advents and Ajani's and Breemazes, giving the opponent the 3/3 is much like it is in Mono Blue Devotion, where all their ground pounders can deal with it in a certain way.
Yep.
Where this deck is very similar, where you just have, sometimes it'll be bad to give them the 3/3, but it's better than them having the Archangel of Thune or Stormbrat Dragon or something that would beat you anyway.
Like an Eidolon of Blossoms or something.
Like an Eidolon of Blossoms, yes.
Yeah.
But I think that this is just a great place to be for strategy like this, and it's just the new evolution of what Selesnya decks are supposed to look like. There's also this great card that is in the Azurius Guild that just blows out permanents that even Mono Blue has been splashing, and that's in the sideboard where we're going right now. All right, so in the sideboard, we have the Detention Spheres. And now this is a card that we've seen other decks splash. The Esper Human deck that has been around for the last year pretty much was blue because of this card. It played a couple other cards that were also blue, but mainly it was just to get this in the deck.
Yeah, pretty much.
And it's just a very powerful effect. And giving it to a Selesnya deck that wants to just go a little bit slower, and that's always been the problem for Selesnya decks, is that they can't go slower after sideboard because they have to be the aggressor because they don't have good answers to things. But just getting a sideboard that has blue now gives you negates for the late game against the Revelations, detention spheres to hit other problematic permanents that opposing decks might have. I don't know exactly which permanents they're afraid of, but I love that you just have a card in your sideboard that's like, oh, I should beat that now. Like now I have access to something, I'll beat it. And the great thing that this deck has is a huge life gain package against all these annoying red-white burn decks that are popping up. The deck has 12 dual lands, 2 Mana Confluence, almost what I've been accustomed to playing, except with 2 more Pain lands, and every deck I play has 4 Mana Confluence. But having just a huge life gain package after sideboard is exactly where you want to be in those matchups. So they curve out really nicely. You don't have too many 4-drops, so you don't get stuck. But you do have the Unflinching Courages that will probably get dealt with from a Chain to the Rocks. But it was that life that you needed to stem the bleeding to get to Fiendslayers connecting or Tristani's getting online.
Yeah, and a lot of times you can use Unflinching Courage as like a one-shot combat trick too, where like your guy's gonna die, but like it turns your 3/3 into a 5/5 and they can't block it, so it effectively deals them 5 damage.
And then they'll deal with it next turn, but that 5 damage not only stopped you from dying from the burn that they have to draw more now, but it forced them to use their mana to deal with it the following turn, which means that you have more time to either deal lethal damage or get a Tristani online, something about that. Plus, Tristani is, able to be dealt with Chain to the Rock, so you want to force them to use that earlier. So then they have to have multiples to deal with like your other creatures. And then 2 Sundering Growths, I don't know why they have them, but I'm sure glad they did because this is the matchup we're playing today.
Yep.
And it's results-oriented thinking.
Yeah, Sundering Growth, I actually think, there's like so many enchantments and artifacts in Standard right now, and mostly enchantments, and your deck has so many tokens that like Sundering Growth is just like the premier enchantment removal spell.
Oh yeah,
like even just like hitting like a Binding of Thassa and populating, or like hitting a Hammer, or hitting a Courser even. Like there's just so many like random things that I don't know. It seems worthwhile to have.
Oh yeah, any junk deck that has Coursers and then potentially has Banishing Lights, I'm going to bring that in.
Yeah.
It's going to hit a Courser, which is a good target in the first place, because if I ever have a token, you have something that's going to turn it on, and it's part of your your combo as you need the lands to be able to make sure that your removal is good. Like a lot of those junk mid-range decks just rely on Courser Living. Jund Monsters doesn't, but that's part of its like core card engine. But like the junk decks that exist, they need their Coursers. They need more removal spells than their deck can provide them.
Yeah, and that's why like those decks don't flood out on like 25 land and 4 Sylvan Caryatids because they have Courser. So if you can deal with that and put pressure on them at the same time, it's just a pretty sweet thing. Yeah,
but anyway, guys, that is Bant Aggro from Portland States. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, but I think it's just going to be a slaughter. Not going to lie. I think I'm finally going to get you after last week, how disappointed it was to lose all those matches.
All right, well, I'm not going to listen to anything Brad says. I'm going to bubble myself up in a sphere of safety and try to take it back to him.